My name is Parthipan Siva. I'm the co-founder and head of research at Chirp. And what I want to talk to you about today is how to use the computer vision tool chains, technology with privacy-preserving sensors to take care of people who are aging in place in their home. So just a little bit of context before I dive into the data. It's no secret, people over 65 are growing in number, and it's expected to reach about 78 million in 2035 just in the US alone. This is putting a strain on family members who are caring for them in their home, because as COVID has showed us, long-term care centers are completely broken here and elsewhere in the world. So more and more people want to age for as long as possible at home. And their family members want to make sure that they are safe and taken care of at home. And if they need help, they can reach out for help. So what's there to help you take care of your parents who are aging at home? Well, the iconic solution is the medical Aid Pendant. So a wearable necklace, smartwatch, whichever way, however you do it, is something you carry with you at all times. You can press a button to get help. And there's a two-way audio on some of them. So as soon as you press a button, somebody's there to help you. Some of these wearables are smart in that they can detect a fall. So if you're wearing it and you fall down, it could automatically detect a fall and send an alert. But the problem is there's a 60% rejection rate for these things. They don't have it on them. So they either forget it, they take it off for a shower and forget to put it back on. They take it off for the night and they forget to put it back on when they get up. So imagine the case, you have to carry this with you. You put it on the nightstand, you went to sleep, you get up and need to go to the washroom. Are you going to remember to pick it up? Probably not. So there's a push to do an ambient solution. So that's a sensor or device in the home that monitors the person, and if they need help, they can get help. If they have a fall, it'll automatically detect it and send a notification to the caregivers. So what are the immediate concerns of caregivers? What does this system have to be able to do? Some of these things are fairly basic. So one of our first beta test users, all he wanted to know was, did his mom make it to bed? Sometimes she gets tired and can't get out of the couch, so she ends up spending the whole night at the couch. Whereas he just wants to know if she doesn't make it to bed, he can drive there, help her get into bed, and he can go home. Some people wanted to know, are their parents up and about, out of bed and following their normal daily routines, or are they sick and just in bed all day long? Some people wanted to know, they want to know when they're awake, so they can call them and remind them about medication or other things instead of calling them and waking them up if they haven't woken up yet. One of the more important things is, did they have visitors? This is for social isolation. You don't want, are they getting regular visitors or personal support workers? Did they show up to help your parents set up meals and whatnot? So with loss of memory, sometimes there's a contention between the person aging in place and support workers. Support workers say they came in, the person says, no, you didn't come in, but there's a confusion there. And obviously emergency situations like falls or even just stuck somewhere and needing help, you need to be able to get help immediately from your family caregivers. Some of the more long-term concerns these devices have to be able to detect and analyze is mobility decreases. Is the person getting less and less mobile in the home? Are they not walking around as much? Is the risk of fall increasing? So are they at higher risk of fall? And if so, what kind of interventions do you need to make? Is there any sudden changes in habits, or including like lack of sleep due to medication changes? Are they dehydrated? They're not going to the kitchen to eat or drink. They're not going to the washroom. Or are they going to the washroom too many times, though that could indicate an infection? Now, these are the type of questions a family physician might ask your parents during a checkup or during some concern. The problem is, as you grow older, memory is not reliable. Some people have dementia and can't even remember. So relying on them to explain what these habit changes are becomes harder. So if the device can detect these and record these, then you have a record for your family doctor who can keep track of this and see if there's any interventions you need to make. Now, these devices are caring for some of the most vulnerable population in our society. These are elderly people. They have dementia, or they're too frail to do things for themselves. So these devices have to have these three things. First and foremost, it needs to be privacy preserving. I come from video surveillance background, computer vision, using video cameras, but I can't put cameras throughout the homes because you don't want cameras recording you every day. You don't want cameras in your bedroom. You don't want cameras in the bathroom where faults occur the most often. So you need to find privacy preserving sensors to do this. It has to be easy to use for the seniors as well as the family caregivers, and it has to be easy to install. So you need to be able to put it in your home on your own. Families need to be able to do that without doing fancy calibrations or setting up in a room, like measuring the room, making sure it's like n meters high, running a calibration routine. None of those has to be there. It simply has to be put there and ready to go. So let's look at this privacy sensors, privacy preserving sensors. So like I said, camera gives you a huge rich context of data, contextual data. We've used it in so many different ways for object detection, detecting people, tracking people, action recognition, activity detection. But it has very low privacy preserving capabilities because it's always looking at you. You're changing clothes, it's going to look at you. So cameras are sort of high data richness, low privacy, data privacy. And in the opposite end, there's an inverse relationship here. You have motion sensors and door sensors. Those things will give you when the door's been opened or if there's motion in the room, but they have very low data richness. They can't tell you how many people are in the room. They can't tell you is the person sitting down, standing up, sleeping, stuff like that. So that's sort of the two extreme ends. Somewhere in the middle, you get sort of low resolution thermal sensors, sort of 1 pixel by 1 pixel thermal sensors to 8 pixel by 8 pixel thermal sensors. Some of the more recent thermal piles can go up to 32 by 32 to 80 by 80 pixel resolution. So these are what I consider mid-resolution thermal piles. So they give you enough context. And during the COVID pandemic, these became very high demand because they let you measure the temperature of people without having to touch them. Just a little camera, you put your face close to it and it can get you your temperature reading. And then there are higher resolution IR cameras used for both surveillance and medical purposes. But the higher the resolution you go, the less data privacy you have. So those are available. And sort of going orthogonal to that, you have depth cameras. But the problem with depth cameras is they're still using a camera a lot of them still use an actual camera to record and do triangulation. And also they have very low field of view. So you might end up using a lot of those in the home. LiDAR sensors are great. You can monitor them, privacy preserving, no pictures are taken, give you a good resolution, 3D point cloud of what people are doing. But the problem is they're expensive for use in home. The new kid on the block is millimeter wave radar sensors. And I'll be talking a lot about that because I find that a lot of the computer vision technologies is applicable to radar sensor data, but it hasn't been used as much. So I'm going to talk about that the most here. And what the radar gives you is it's sort of like a LiDAR, but it gives you a very sparse 3D representation of moving objects in the scene. I'll show you the data a little bit later. And our device, the Chirp device for monitoring seniors, uses a radar and the mid-resolution thermopile. The mid-resolution thermopile is mainly used for annotating the data for the radar data and for users to get a visual verification of any emergencies that happened in the home. Easy to install means you take these two sensors, you want to put it on the wall. The user can put one in each room and connect it with to their smartphones, and that's it. Off they go. They don't need to do anything else. So that's how easy you want it to be. So I'm going to talk a lot about the data because the actual algorithms you use will be the same as the computer vision algorithms you use for detection tracking, and I'll get into it a little bit later. Now, the thermal sensor here, what you see is a 32 by 32 pixel looking at a kitchen, and it's been upsampled to a 320 by 320 video, but its original resolution was 32 by 32. You can see a person walking around. There's a stove here, has something on it, which gives you the heat at that location. As you can see, when the person's nearby, you can see it pretty well. When the person's far away, it becomes less visible because they're literally like 1 or 2 pixels in size. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because as you can see, it's like a normal video. It's a thermal video, but you can still use the same standard computer vision applications like detection of people, segmentation. All the same tool chains exist for this. What I want to talk about more is the radar data and how it's very similar to using a video camera. So what does the radar data give you? So this is a millimeter radar, and what it gives you is on each frame is a range Doppler image. So essentially a range and velocity. Doppler is just velocity. So if you look at over time, so figure A shows you frames. Each frame is a range Doppler image. Figure D, which I've put in a rectangle, is one frame of the video you're getting from the radar. And what that is highlighting moving objects in the room. So you can see about at the top is 0.5 meters from the radar all the way to the bottom of 2.5 meters from the radar. And you can see between 1 meter and 1.5 meter, there's a person walking. And what you see of the person is these spikes in the radar reflection data that's coming through. The huge blob of reflection is your torso, because your torso is the largest solid mass, and that's going to give you the most reflections of the radar millimeter wave signals. And that's going at about minus 1.2 meters per second. So a person's walking about 1.2 meters per second away from the radar. And all these little blobs are velocities of the different limbs moving at different velocities. And here, the right foot is nearly zero velocity because it's stationary on the ground. Your left foot is swinging because you're walking away from the device. So the left foot is giving you a minus 4.5 meters per second velocity. And you can pick out all these different limbs that's moving at different speeds. So these are called micro movements. And if you combine this with the multi-antenna radar, you can get the azimuth angle and the elevation angle of these blobs. And what that ends up giving you is a very sparse 3D point cloud of everything that's moving in the scene. So this is in fact a person moving around. When they stand still, they disappear because I'm subtracting out the stationary points. But as long as they're moving, you see them moving around. It's very sparse. You can make out the center mass very well. The feet and hands start disappearing. With this data, you suddenly have a very sparse 3D point cloud, which can be used to do your standard detection and tracking algorithms. So take the data, do detection. It can be as simple as a 3D clustering, like a DB scan or k-mean clustering, or it could be as complex as projecting all these points into a depth image and doing a shallow convolutional neural net on it for detecting people. You can take all the 3D sparse points and do a point net, train a point net to do segmentations of the people. Once you have these detections, you can do your standard data association tracking or common filter tracking or particle filter tracking. So it's the exact same tool chain you would use with video images. You're using it here for tracking people with these sparse point cloud data, which gives you a privacy-preserving way of looking at people moving in the scene. So here's what it would look like if you were to track people in every room. So there's somebody sleeping in the bedroom. somebody comes, the PSW come in the morning, they come in through the living room, that's where the main entrance is, they go to the kitchen, set some things up for breakfast, and you'll notice that they will leave through the living room upstairs to the bedroom to get the person. So by tracking these individuals in the home, you get the number of people, all the data that answers the caregiver concern. So the left panel shows you sleep. So you can see that the time in bed, so how long are they in bed? So this person goes to bed usually around 10:30, 11 p.m. and wakes up at 6 a.m. And you have the duration of sleep, and you can spot out any anomalies you see in the sleep pattern. The middle plot shows you which room they're currently in and which rooms they were in previously. So you can get a quick glimpse of, okay, they're moving around like normal, or if there's, and you can see the bathroom visits are normal or not normal. For example, on Saturday, there's only 2 bathroom visits in the morning. The bathrooms are the green color. And in the whole evening and afternoon, there wasn't any bathroom visits. So that could give you a flag on something is going wrong. And on the right panel is just the number of people in the home. So anything greater than 1 would be considered visitor. So you can see every morning there was a PSW coming in the evening there was a PSW coming in, except on Saturday and Friday there was a huge block of time when somebody was visiting. You can get walking speeds to track if there's any decreases in mobility. So using the radar and the same tool chain of detection and tracking that you would use in computer vision with video data, you're able to answer all these concerns that the caregiver has about their parents. And so that's sort of occupancy detection. Now we can also do the exact same thing with action. And here, because we're working on radar data, we can integrate over the range data. So let's say we go take a look at from 1 meter to 1.5 meter and just integrate over the range. Then what you end up with on the plot B is velocity versus time. So this is an example of it. On the bottom, you have velocity versus time, and on the top, you have elevation, so the height of these points that's being detected over time. And what do you see? So in the elevation map, you can see there's been a decrease, sudden decrease in elevation, then a slow increase, sudden decrease, slow increase. Velocity-wise, you can see there was a high velocity, a wave, positive velocity, then 0, then a negative velocity, high velocity. So what are these actually being representing? This is actually me standing up, falling down, which is the sudden elevation change, has spike in velocity, slowly getting up and falling down again. So this is how you detect actions. You can take these as images into a shallow CNN, and you can do detection, activity detection right on these data. And you get fall, get up, you can do sit down, stand up, lying in bed. All the different actions can be detected here using a sliding window over these data. Here's a real live example of somebody falling. They were seated down, they got up, and they lost balance and suddenly fell down. If I pause this video here, on the bottom right panel, you can see the velocity profile. There's a sudden spike. It's been outlined in the red box because it detected a fall. Right above it, you can see the sudden change in elevation data that was seen along with the velocity spike to indicate a fall. So this is how we do action detection on these data. So to sort of wrap things up, we have these radar and low resolution thermopile data. Both give you very sparse representation of people in the home, preserving their privacy, preserving their dignity, but a huge rich set of information that we can apply our standard detection, kind of neural network detection, particle filtering tracking, or multi-hypothesis tracking, or whatever we've used to on these data to get occupancy, how many people are in the home, what are they doing, action detection, are they sitting down, standing up, did they fall down? And on top of that, you can build anomaly detections and alarms for caregivers to ensure the safety of the person being monitored without depriving them of their privacy. What's the most popular application for depth cameras, AI? Depth cameras obviously was popularized by Connect for entertainment purposes, essentially, right? But in terms of wide distributed applications, I haven't seen too many. People are still struggling with. I come from surveillance background. We try to use it for surveillance purposes, and there are companies that use it for surveillance purposes, because for counting people, overhead depth camera counts people going through grocery stores and whatnot for the number of people. So that application exists, but everybody struggles with the fact that it's a low field of view. So you end up doorway is easy to cover, but if you want to cover a large area, the depth camera becomes harder unless you're willing to put tons of these cameras around. So that's what most people are struggling with in terms of applying depth cameras for. But in-home exercise and stuff like that is being tested out with depth cameras as well.
In regards to kind of future development of the technology, I mean, appreciate the privacies there. But what other insights do you think you could make from the data, maybe stuff that you're kind of working on? I was thinking like kind of tying into kind of like Alzheimer's and stuff like that, and kind of diseases. So, and
we are actually trying to do a pilot study in terms of dementia, trying to detect early onset dementia just based on activity patterns in the home, stuff like that you can do. And Amazon Alexa just got approval from FCC for using radar in the Alexa itself for sleep monitoring. So it can actually detect heart rates while you're sleeping, movement. So they call sleep hygiene, essentially. So this is not just for seniors, but for anybody with sleep apnea or whatever. It can track how restful a sleep you had.
One other thing I was curious to know as well, back in Australia, there was this company, they're all over the shop these days. If I was watching the TFC game on Saturday, and basically all athletes these days will wear like a chest monitor thing. I can see some similarities between the technology that you're building and kind of what they have. It's all about the data and monitoring, stuff. One of my clients back in Australia, they did a similar type of technology, and they were licensing it out to various sporting teams and such. And what they could see is that if Jeff is playing football, soccer, and he has this pattern of motion and movement, they can kind of look at that and be like, hey, Jeff, you know what? Your behavior looks very, very, and your movement looks very, very similar to John here, who actually tore his ACL 2 years ago. And so, I mean, can you kind of compare data and movements to kind of, oh, well, look, she kind of early onset Alzheimer's or something like that? Or
so actually my last job was running the SportLogic lab here in Waterloo, which does sport analytics, video-based sport analytics. But it's a similar thing. So there you can get the data and cluster. Even if you're looking at professional sports, you can cluster people's movement and say these players play similarly, these players play similarly. Similar to that, here we can take resident data and cluster them to see patterns. So these type of people are more likely to have a fall because our previous people who walked like this had a fall, for example, right? But we have to be a little bit more careful. We can only get those data from studies we do with hospitals and other institutes. We can't really get data from our beta users and all the different users and cluster them because of data privacies, right? So we do have studies we do, and we ask for volunteers to come in and let us put the devices there. So we're collecting data for those type of things, but doing it at a large scale, and we just have to be a little bit careful of the privacy concerns there.
Any kind of thoughts on kind of integrating like voice to?
Yeah, so I didn't focus on the voice just mainly because of there's a computer vision stuff, but voice data looks very similar to the radar data. In fact, like the spectrogram, the velocity versus time I was showing you, that's essentially what the voice data would look like. And we use voice right now for people to get help. So let's say you got stuck on the couch and you can't get up, and you just need somebody to come help you get up, or you had just some other, like you had a chest pain or whatever, and you need. So what we allow them to do is they just say help. We detect the word help. If it occurs multiple times, then we know somebody's calling for help. And we send an alert to the caregiver on their smartphones, and they can actually talk straight through our device as a PA system to get help. So that's something we put in place just for people getting help. But we also have other audio events we detect, such as which is more in the development area right now, but coughing, water left run on. Like I had an aunt who had dementia, and she left the tap on, and it flooded my cousin's house all the way straight to the basement, right? So if we had acoustic event detection, we can see that the water tap is still left on. Somebody should go check. So acoustic event is something we can look at as well. But again, we have to be careful with the privacy involved.